Buonasera a tutti, good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Viviana and I would like to welcome back our regular listeners and also welcome any new listeners. Also be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at the Italian Radio Hour and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on any past video interviews. Vorrei dare il benvenuto ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo, grazie per essere con noi anche oggi mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana. Well, today I couldn't be more excited to have a wonderful conversation with Enrica Monzani. She is the founder of a small kitchen in Genoa, and now she's a published author of a beautiful book, Liguria in Cucina, The Flavors of Liguria. So be ready to fasten your seatbelts because we're traveling to Liguria today. Ma prima, pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? L'Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org. Un caffè, per favore. My first cup of coffee sets the tone for my entire day, and I get my coffee at La Prima Espresso. La Prima has been brewing Pittsburgh's best coffee for nearly 35 years. Try any of their in-house roasted varieties of beans from all over the world at home, or come and enjoy an espresso or a cappuccino at any of their locations, where their friendly baristas and familiar faces will make you feel at home, because a trip to La Prima is like a little trip to Italy, only closer to home. Well, finally, the wait is over, and I would like to reintroduce again Enrica Monzani, the founder of A Small Kitchen in Genoa, and also the author of a beautiful book that is just coming out these days, entitled Liguria in Cucina, The Flavors of Liguria. Benvenuta, welcome to the program, Enrica.
Ciao, Viviana. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited because back maybe a couple of years ago, during COVID, where we all resorted to technology to keep in touch with the audience, learning new skills and so forth, I came across Enrica's beautiful website and also Instagram account, A Small Kitchen in Genoa. And she was offering, and I think she still does, both in-person and online cooking classes. And I do have some good friends of Liguria, as most of us have attempted or made pesto. We're always asking ourselves, is that the real thing? Am I making it right? But what I was intrigued is that in addition to this, probably the flagship, so to speak, recipe of Liguria, Enrica was offering additional specialties that otherwise I would not have been able to make myself. And also she had a lovely story to share and a wonderful kitchen that she cooks in. So Enrica, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit also while you were growing up. Was food so important to you, or was it at that point as a little girl just something that, you ate to nourish yourself?
Ciao, Viviana. Thank you for these questions and for the very nice, I would say, amazing introduction. Thank you so much. Okay. First of all, I was born and bred in Genova. So I'm 100% Genoese, which sounds crazy for the Americans who maybe traveled a lot all around the world, or for people coming from Italy to America, but I've always lived here. And yes, food was something very important, something, yes, extremely important in my life. That was, I would say, the way I was taught to love. So this is the way my grandmother and my mother loved me when I was a child. And I spent countless hours in my grandmother's kitchen when my mother was working. and I was lying in the kitchen watching TV whilst she were kneading something, cooking something. So the sofrito smell in my nostrils since 7 a.m. This is something quite common in my childhood. And so cooking and eating well and taking care of people, bringing to the table their favorite dishes and accomplishing all their food requests is something I was taught since I was a child. So yes, food is something very important. And I decided to make food something of also my work. Though, as we were discussing before this interview, this was not my first job. Indeed, I practiced as a lawyer for 15 years. I was a maritime lawyer here in Genova. And then I realized that was not my cup of tea. It was quite stressful and not really in my, something in line with my personality and with my passions and also with my family commitments, I would say, as well. So I took a sabbatic year, which are now 8 sabbatic years. And in the meantime, I opened the blog. I started blogging in Italian and in English on Ligurian cuisine, because that was indeed my passion, and as well as the history of Genova and our region. So my blog is something in between a food blog and a travel blog and a lifestyle blog, though focused in the tiny niche of Liguria.
So for people that are not, obviously everyone is familiar with, but not everyone has the in-depth knowledge of the territory like yourself and the history. So in order to frame a little bit also the cuisine or some of the customs or maybe even the personality of the Ligurians and the Genovese, can you explain a little bit about maybe the influences that had an impact on your territory?
Yes, sure. Well, we should spend hours talking
hours and hours. Yeah, we're not going to make it into a history class, but
hours.
just enough for people to realize.
Sure. So first of all, maybe not everybody knows where Liguria is, because Liguria is one of the tiniest region in Italy. So for me, it's very important. But if I look at it on the map, it's a very tiny region. It's on the north. It's a coastal region on the north, in between the France border and Tuscany. That's
like the connector, that arch that connects.
It's a tiny tongue of land. Liguria is squeezed between the sea and the mountains. This makes this region special. Special because this region was for many centuries was kind of isolated from the rest of the northern countries, and the only way of make trades was the sea. And this really affected our cuisine and our history, of course. And as far as food are concerned, we can divide Liguria in 2 areas. One is the Genova city, which can be considered as an island in itself. So it was a very powerful city, was as powerful as a state in the Middle Ages, Renaissance. And so Genova has its own history and its own culinary traditions. Then there is the rest of Liguria. The rest of Liguria, which is made of tiny fishermen villages, of a very deep valley, moving from the coast to the mountains, of extremely big woodlands and peasants. So that is the rest of Liguria. So I would say there are these 2 different scenarios of our region, especially as far as food is concerned, but also as far as history is concerned. So Genova was one of the biggest commercial hubs in the Middle Ages. It was one of the marine republics. It was extremely powerful. The Genoese were able at making money They were bankers, financiers, brokers, ship owners, ship warriors. They made money and they were extremely great traders. Genova made an empire, a trade empire in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Caspian Sea, and this really influenced the goods and the ingredients and the way of cooking that and the knowledge about cuisine that arrived in Genova, because indeed the Genoese cuisine was full of spices arriving from the Mediterranean, from the eastern countries. The Muslims indeed influenced the way we cook, taught us how to use nuts, how to use oranges, how to use how to candy fruits, for example. So many traditions that then we developed in the centuries and for which Genova is famous. For example, candied fruit was something that we were taught by the Arabic countries. And or of course, for example, pasta. We have no wheat fields in Liguria because we have no place for farming wheats. Of course, we are just close between the sea and the mountains. But Genova had a huge amount of wheat in its warehouses because the Genoese were wheat traders. So they collected wheat all over the Mediterranean Sea, and they kept the wheat in the city in big warehouses. And they usually try to keep it as long as possible, and they wait for famine periods to sell the wheat
at higher prices
and make money on that. But this makes Genova one of the pasta hub in Italy because we had a lot of wheat. And so there were many, many pasta makers in Genova, and dried pasta was a product very common here and trade abroad. So we were selling dry pasta, or we were making fresh pasta as in the same quantity, or I mean, let's say the pasta art was as important in Genova as in Naples, for example. But this is something nobody knows. But it was really a very important tradition, though we had no wheat. But this is because of the trades of the Genoese. So there are many history about that. So how the attitudes and what our the noble families of Genova were able to introduce in our food culture, which are really, really interesting. And then there is the rest. And so the rest of Liguria, which is extremely various and even not comparable. So Liguria is so tiny, but it is so rich in history and in dishes and in food cultures, because our tiny arch is divided into valleys, which goes from the coast to the north. And each valley is very deep and isolated by itself and contaminated from the north hand and the east hand. So and we have different regions where we that are in our borders, because we have Piedmont on north, we have Lombardy, we have Emilia-Romagna, we have Tuscany, and each different region influences somehow the different valleys which divides Liguria. So we have many tiny micro food cultures in each valley. And so this is amazing how you can how many different dishes and traditions and also products you can find. Also from the really from the vegetarian point of view, from the agricultural point of view, there are so many local different foods and veggies that can just born in some region. So this is a tiny region, but it is extremely rich as far as food is concerned.
So obviously, there are certain places that are obvious destinations for a lot of people who hasn't gone or heard of the Cinque Terre. But again, from a local perspective, I'm from Rome, so obviously everyone is going to Rome. And then if you were to share an experience of Liguria as a local, and it doesn't have to be, 2 weeks. It might be just a handful of places. Would you be able to share with us where would you go? Maybe even with your family on a weekend, or something that gives you more of an authentic exposure to the culture and the people.
Okay, so beyond the Cinque Terre.
You can also talk about the Cinque Terre, just because it's like one of those household destinations, that everyone, Cinque Terre, because it's always included in a tour. But again, as a local, where would you go for a scampagnata, or maybe to discover some additional treasures? So anything.
Yes, definitely. Or on the coast, I would skip Cinque Terre because they are very nice, but I think that Liguria is far beyond Cinque Terre. So, and you can find everything you want to know on Cinque Terre on the internet or everywhere. So, special places or unusual places where to go. So, don't miss Camogli.
Mm-hmm.
Camogli has nothing to envy to Cinque Terre, and it is a tiny fisherman villages in the Golfo Paradiso. Golfo Paradiso is a gulf which goes from the east end of Genova towards Portofino, Portofino Mountain, Portofino excluded. And in that gulf, there is Camogli, Sori, Recco, Bogliasco, and that area is very nice. There are these tiny villages, and the food culture is very strong. There you can eat focaccia al formaggio, for example, which is not a focaccia, so it's not a leavened dough. It's not a bread-like focaccia, but it's a savory pie made of thin layers of unleavened dough stuffed with lots of cheese, creamy cheese.
And that's what we prepared, if I remember correctly, very thin with the cheese inside, right?
Exactly.
The one
we had to stretch it with our hands.
It was beautiful. It was such a lovely experience. So
exactly, and focaccia di Recco was born there, but also there you can taste panzotti, which are our belly-shaped stuffed pasta with vegetables and just greens inside. And then there are trofie, which are our curly, short, fresh pasta, seasoned, of course, with pesto. And that is a very rich area. And you can also hike on the mountains there. And there are lots of nice trails that you can do facing the sea. So it's because the mountains there are very steep, so you can hike and have the sea in front of you, and it's a charming place where to go and spend a couple of days.
I'm just going to share a picture of Camogli as you're talking about the other places.
This is the Camogli port.
Yes,
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. This is beautiful. And there you can taste a wonderful farina, a wonderful focaccia formaggio. Then another, I love the inland. I have this passion for the Ligurian inland. So the inland of Chiavari. Chiavari is a very nice, tiny town on the coast, though the sea is not nice because there is a port, but the city of Chiavari is a medieval city with all these arcades and columns, looking like a tiny Bologna, though.
Like all the porticos.
With the porticos, exactly. Wonderful shops for shopping food, but also dresses. And
how about antiques? Didn't you have to talk about the
antiques? Right, because the second Sunday of each month, there is an antique market, which is very famous in Liguria, but I would say also in the north of Italy. And for 2 days, there are all the antiques selling their stuff, and you can find very nice things there.
Okay, we'll have to put it on the calendar. Nice. Yes.
And the inland of Chiavari, Val Graveglia or Valle Sturla, Val d'Aveto, those are our inlands full of chestnuts and hazelnut trees and mushrooms and cheeses. So a tour there is, if you have a car, of course, because you can just get there by car, you can find many tiny things to visit, and cheesemakers to taste, and restaurants where to go. So it's a nice taste of the inland of Liguria, which is, by the way, the biggest part of our region. We are also the most woody region in Italy.
And I was going to ask you, are there any sagre related to, I don't know, I'm just going to say La Sagra della Nocciola, something related to a specific food product typical of that region, or any festivals?
I don't know of any in particular, if
Okay.
I have to be honest, because there are many along the year, and depending also on the season and when the product is actually in season. So they are not planned so in advance when it comes to those tiny villages. So they planned it in 2 months in advance. So I have no suggestion for that.
So now fast forward, we talked a little bit about the territory and what to expect. And I wonder, are there differences between the Ligurians? Do you find, I don't know, that the Genoese might be different from the Samonese, or pretty much similar,
Pretty much similar. The Genoese and the Ligurians are not very open at first sight, I would say. So they tend not to open themselves, and they do not appear so welcoming. Actually, they are not that welcoming. There are tons of jokes on the Ligurians which are not welcoming at all. By the way,
they take their time to get to know people. Let's put it that way. Yes.
But if you make friends with a Ligurian, then you make fast friends
for life. It's a friend for life.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So no, it makes sense. It makes sense to to take your time to build trust and build the relationship.
See, the first impact is not so easy, but if you are kind, then
don't take it personally. Just try a second time. Okay, so obviously hospitality is a big thing now, part of your life. So let's go back to 8 years ago, when from being a maritime lawyer, you started to think about this idea of diving into the gastronomy and the cooking classes. How, this is a personal question, but how was that perceived at home? Because I'm also a small business owner myself, and I came from a pretty strong corporate career as well. So how was it? It's like with great enthusiasm, or were you the one that was a little more scared, even though you had the idea? Would you mind sharing?
No, well, yes. Don't know. So they at home, it depends. My parents were not so happy about that, because they saw me spending so many years and efforts and studies in becoming a lawyer and making a career as a lawyer, that of course for them it was it was hard to accept that I was putting aside all those efforts, and that career with so many wonderful perspectives I had in front of me. But the other side, they knew that I was not happy. So they had to support me. But I have to say that the biggest support was from my husband, because he really took care about me and supported the idea. And I would have never done this without him, because of course he said, "Don't worry, I will pay the bills."
Take a chance. You have a safety net.
A chance, and he said, "Okay, don't worry, I will take care paying the bills for a couple of years, so you have time to build what you want and to create your new tiny business." And so he was he is my how you say, he is my stakeholder.
Yes.
My partner in business, by the way. And And yes, but now everybody's very happy, especially my dad, who was so sad at the beginning. Now he's so proud of
Yeah,
me.
I always knew that you could do better than
Hey,
working
I
for
could, yes, no. He said, I would never imagine that you have done such
Yeah.
many things alone. But he is very proud.
So you started your blog, right? And who was your primary audience? And was it already in English or was mainly in the Italian language?
No, actually, the idea was to write just in English.
Oh, okay, great.
Because the main idea was to blog in English, because there was a nobody was blogging about Ligurian food in English, and actually nobody is doing it anyway since now. So there was a gap, and I would like to fill the gap and share. Especially the aim of all my job is really to share and keep alive and dust away the and makes the tradition alive also in this contemporary world, and the internet is part of it. So the idea was to share in English. Then I thought to do that bilingual, which is a hard job because everything is made twice every time. But of course, that was a vehicle for making relationships here in Liguria, and so becoming let people know that what I'm doing and that I'm writing about Ligurian food also to the Ligurians and also to the Italians. So this was the idea to do everything into languages.
Wonderful.
And I'm still keeping
on. Do you remember when you start to have your first cooking class? And were you a little nervous or?
Really? It started by chance, by the way, because the first idea was just blogging and try to build a blog and then do the influencer, but it takes a lot of time, of course. And then a friend of mine say, why don't you make a cooking class for my friends who are coming from the US? Okay, why not? I can speak English. I know I can cook. We can try to do that. I have a kitchen where we can do these classes, and so we started and we do that. It was very exciting, very exciting. And then I say, okay, probably this is something I can do for work. And then everything started as almost spontaneously. So I start offering cooking classes, then I start offering food tours, and then my offers changed, and then the cooking classes arrived, but they arrived online. The cooking classes online arrived, but they arrived after COVID, during COVID. And then during COVID, I start writing the book. So everything is evolving with the time. Now I have a more clear idea of what I'm doing, and I know I'm not an influencer. I prefer define myself as a food researcher and experience curator, because indeed what I want to do is to offer food experiences related to Liguria and its food. So this is my business, and this is where I'm going, and so, but everything is evolved in the last years.
And I have to say, obviously being in the media world, I do have to spend some time, whether I want to or not, or whether I will admit or not, kind of looking at trends and who is who. And I personally make a huge distinction between people that have just gained success because they're starting to post pretty pictures and sometimes very artistic content, but I would say content without a soul, without the tradition, without the knowledge. And then the ones that are proposing something that is authentic. You can see that, again, is an organic evolution of where they're at, what they're proposing, and that is the feel and that the feeling that I got from you, from your account, and then when I I took the class with you, you just confirmed everything that I was perceiving. So I'm also, very, very happy that you are not keeping all the Ligurian secrets for yourself and through your cooking classes, but mainly for the book that is coming out. You are indeed sharing the patrimony, the richness of this region with an audience that might not be able to enjoy these treasures because they don't speak Italian. And that is usually what has happened in the past, where it's a lot of best kept secrets because of the language barrier. So here is the barrier is down.
At least you have 80 recipes you can make at home because it is English as well.
Exactly. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Liguria in Cucina, the flavors of Liguria, ricette della tradizione, traditional recipes? Are some of, I would assume, I haven't seen the book yet. I'm dying for that shipment to come to arrive.
Show you here.
Here it is. But do you have also some of your maybe family recipes, or do you try to stay kind of more in line with the Ligurian?
Allora, this is my first Liguria cookbook. Hopefully not the last. We see. And I would like to sum up or collect the most iconic Ligurian recipes, because I think this is what was needed and what I had to start with. So most of these recipes are the one we cook at home. So the recipes I have seen cooking by my grandmother, by my mother. Other no, because they were not in our repertoire, but they are recipes I consulted, I found and tried and redeveloped and rewritten on the many Ligurian cookbooks I have. I have a collection of Ligurian cookbooks. Every cookbook that since 1830 has been published, I have it. No, I don't know. I always look for in the antiques bookshop if I find something that
I'll take a picture of one that I have. I think it's entitled Basilico, and it's hard to find. Yeah, it's hard to find here. I don't remember how I got my hands on it. And so Liguria has been on my mind for quite some time. So
and so some recipes are let's say, yes, the codified, the very most common, and I just look for the recipes in the book, in the various book, and then I collected them, compared, and tried and redeveloped. Many are familiar, and some of them are from friends of mine, which I am very fond of. They are a chef or a gastronom or very skilled cooks, and they gave them to me as a present. So any recipe here is really reliable, so
it's doable, right?
They have been cooked thousands of times, so this of course I'm sure about that.
Okay.
And so you can find the milestones, I would say. So for the any recipe you will find in the Ligurian restaurants, or in any Christmas menu or Easter menu or Sunday lunch, so you find them there, or in street food or eateries. So
well, I was wondering, is the basil that is commonly used in pesto, and the type of basil that you guys have there, can you describe it? Because sometimes people think bigger is better, and sometimes you go to the supermarkets here in the US, and the basil leaves are this big. I'm not kidding.
No, I know.
And I have an impression, I have a feeling that the basil that we are looking for, okay, is much smaller.
Much smaller. You can also see from the picture. Indeed, the basil we use is the Genoese basil, not because it's grown in Genova, but the variety, the seeds are known as Genoese basil. There are more than 60 varieties of basil in the world. So and it comes from India. So, and there is basil also in South America, and so many countries have its own basil. The one we have here in Liguria is the Genoese basil, and our basil is special for many things. First of all, the leaves for making pesto are tiny, are small, are bright green. They are cut, they are harvested when they are small, because traditionally pesto was made in the mortar, and for making pesto in the mortar you need tender leaves, small tender leaves. Then our variety is special also because the mix of essential oils is different, and we have not that essential oil which gives the mint flavor to pesto, so to basil. Most of the time basil has the last flavor is minty flavor, bitter minty flavor. Our basil has not. But the basil you buy in other Italian region has. So it's really the one that is harvested, that's grown here, that has this special characteristic. So if you want to make a pesto in the US, the best thing would be buying the right seeds online, and then plant it on your in your garden or windowsill, and pick them when they are tiny.
Okay.
And remove the stem, because the stem of the basil is watery and bitter. So when I do pesto all the time, not only in the mortar but also in the blender, I usually remove very well the stem from the leaves. Okay. This is make a big difference when you make pesto. Okay.
Does the order of the ingredients matter when making pesto?
Okay, let's
the oil, all the garlic, or depending then if you're making it in the mortar or in the blender. But
assuming that you are making it in the blender and not in the blender, which is something quite not so common. The way I put ingredients is this: I make a paste with pine nuts, garlic, and very few oil, and then I make a paste out of it. I use an immersion blender, and I put the blades of the immersion blender in the freezer before doing the pesto. This because basil leaves are very tender and spoiled, and then they tend to oxidize. So to prevent oxidation, we have to keep the temperature of the pesto as low as possible. And for this reason, I put the blades of the blender in the freezer, because the blades, when they turn, they generate heat. Okay, and this compromises the flavor of pesto. And also another secret I do is to put the oil in the fridge before making pesto. So the half an hour before. So the oil will be cold, and this will lower dramatically the temperature of your pesto, and it will remain brighter green and with more flavor. By the way, we were saying about the ingredients. Okay, I make a paste with pine nuts and garlic and a tiny oil. Then I start adding the basil leaves, blending with the immersion blender intermittently, of course, and as few as possible, not too much. Once I have put all the basil, I put the cheeses, depending. The traditional recipes provides for 2 cheeses. One is Parmesan cheese, mature Parmesan cheese, and the other is pecorino cheese, the Sardinia pecorino cheese, Fiore Sardo, which is different to find elsewhere from Sardinia and Genova, so forget about it. Let's say just Parmesan cheese. Then I put the cheeses. Then once I've put the cheeses, I put away the immersion blender, and I add oil, the remaining main part of oil, and I stir with a spoon, not with the blender, because I don't want the oil to emulsify with the liquids inside the basil. I want the oil to act as a vehicle that encapsulates the essential oils of the basil leaves for a while. So I put the oil, and then I stir gently with the spoon, and I let everything sit for at least half an hour, the more the merrier. So the oil will absorb the extra virgin olive oil will absorb the essential oils of basil, and this will make the pesto even more fragrant. So this is the way I make pesto with blender. And then you can use it immediately or freeze it or whatever. Always, before seasoning your pasta with pesto, you have to add a couple of 1-2 spoons of boiling pasta waters. And then at this time, yes, you stir very quickly because you want the water to emulsify with the oil and make the pesto creamy.
Okay. Well,
and always remember to put green beans and potatoes in your boiling pasta for a real Genoese pasta al pesto.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Yes, that's actually such a basic and such a tasty combination that I couldn't believe when I first had it, and then I did at home, and it's, again, when people talk, when we talk about Italian food, sometimes it's like the very basic ingredients, but once you add the potatoes and the green beans, it's just the world elevates to a different degree. Now, whenever you talked about also the pecorino, it's worth mentioning that when Italy was not Italy yet, but it was the Kingdom of Sardinia, and we're talking about like the middle of between 1815 and 1859, actually, you did have the Savoy House, that you had the Liguria, Piemonte, and Sardinia, all being part of one. So do you see, or have you found some cross-pollination between Sardinia and Liguria in the older recipes, or
There's one example? But one example is pesto, because pesto originally, so in the first recipes we can find, which are, by the way, on the mid 1800, they provide just for pecorino as a cheese inside. But this because Sardinia was a colony where it was part of the Savoy Empire, but it was also has always been a colony of the Genoese Republic. So all the cheese produced in Sardinia was shipped to Genova, and then from Genova sold abroad and sold elsewhere. So Sardinian pecorino was the main cheese of our city. So it was the cheese mainly consumed in Genova. So of course this is and it is very strong. So nowadays we are not used for those strong flavors, but in the past they used to eat a lot of that cheese.
Okay, another little curiosity, and this will be my last question to you. The corsetti pasta, that is a very fun shape to make. You would need a special stamp, let's call it. I'm going to try to see if I can put out a picture. Can you share the tradition of this pasta that looks like a coin?
Yes, and indeed they were made with coins. This is one of the oldest pasta shape of Liguria. They are circles of pasta where there is drawing, garnishment, embossment on it. And in the originally, so in the past, the first corsetti were made cutting the pasta with a glass, and then pressing on the pasta, on the dough, a coin. And usually on a coin, one side of the coin had a cross. And this is why they are called corsetti, cross, from the croce, corsetti, croces, from the cross. Then they developed this nice stamp, which is made of wood, which cut the dough, and in the same time you can impress a drawing on exactly a design on the pasta. And it is said, though I don't know if it is, I'm not sure if it is true because it is disputed, that the rich families had their heirloom cut inside the stamp to make their custom-made pasta with their heirloom. For sure, this way of shaping pasta and these drawings inside were made for making the dough more rough, and so helping mopping the sauce. This was the so the purpose of making these. And nowadays there are some artisans who makes these stamps, and you can also ask for having them customized with your, for example, I have mine made with my small kitchen logo for making them, and it is fun. It
It
is
is
fun.
it is a beautiful pasta, and maybe when you were talking about the Genoese being able merchants, they wanted to keep on seeing money also in their food. Because they look like coins, right? It's like money, money, money
Always remember.
everywhere.
Yes, that's true. Always remember to make money also when you eat.
More money. It's like if we can, let's so now
Okay.
would this be more a tradition for, I don't want to say pasta connoisseurs, like for instance, people have this idea that everyone in Italy is home making fresh pasta and so forth. And you know, if you are in the food business, yes, you're developing recipes, you're making things from scratch. But then there is also who is not in the food business, so you know, busy lifestyles. So this is something that people might buy in stores, or is there a tradition of every so often, maybe on special holidays, to make at home?
You said it. So for special holidays, people still have fun and love making fresh pasta at home. So it happens that maybe not people of my age, but maybe people of my mom's age, they still make fresh pasta for Sundays. So there is still this tradition of stuffed pasta, ravioli, and so forth. But Sunday or special occasion, Christmas, Easter, and so on. We have lots of fresh pasta shops. And so we eat fresh pasta. We eat a lot of fresh pasta, but we buy it
By the store,
freshly made in the stores. They made pasta every day, and so you have fresh pasta. You can also buy them dry. For example, there are a couple of pasta makers, local pasta makers, who makes, for example, corzetti dry. So you then use them as a barilla pasta for things.
So you can also buy as a gift from your trip to share with your family and friends. That could be also another little souvenir.
Nice. See, like a souvenir. Also, trophy is something that you can find dry nowadays, or corzetti. So they are no more fresh, but I mean,
they're ready for transport.
Ready for travel. Also pesto nowadays. You have pesto for travel, which is not the same.
Okay, because pesto is still considered some sort of liquid, so it has to be within a certain, the jar has to be within a certain size. Otherwise, unfortunately, will still be confiscated. So yes, I hope.
No, but also, the pesto you buy in jars has nothing to do with the pesto you make at home, because they put a lot of
anything that's going to keep the shelf life going and going and going. So while Enrica, this has been such a pleasant conversation. I almost feel that we're like sitting in the same room, and I can't wait until I am back in Italy this summer. Maybe we'll have the ability to get together, maybe cook together or something. But anything else that you want to share? I'm going to put up your website one more time. It's such a cute, it's a very cute and informative website. A small kitchen in Genoa. And again, congratulations for your book, Liguria in Cucina, The Flavors of Liguria. We need it. So you did fill that gap.
Bilingual. It's Italian and English, so every recipe has the translation.
We'll be using also in our language classes then, in addition to the cooking classes. And how can people purchase it? Will be available on.
It's available on Amazon.
Okay, wonderful.
So you can now, I think you can now still pre-order. It will be physically available beginning of April, so in next week, let's say. If you buy, but nowadays it's available for pre-order, so you can pre-order it, and then Amazon will ship it to you once it's available physically, and that's the best way. Otherwise, if you are in Europe, you can get to my website and look for the book and buy it through my website.
Okay, wonderful. Well, unfortunately, our time together is up. Il Big Ben ha detto stop. It is time for us to say arrivederci e alla prossima. We want to thank you for tuning into the program. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any topics you would like us to address, please contact us at theitalianradiohour@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if you or your family or friends have missed a prior episode, or would like to listen to this episode again, please visit our website at www.istitutomonditaliano.org and click on the Italian Radio Hour tab. You can also subscribe to the Italian Radio Hour on YouTube or where you catch your favorite podcasts. I would like to profusely thank our guest Enrica Monzani, our sponsor Istituto Monditaliano, La Prima Espresso, and Alla Boara for the music. Until next time, alla prossima. Ciao ciao!
Ciao, ciao!